What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Podcasting Business School. This is the show where I teach podcasters how to love their show like a hobby and build it like a business. And today we've got a topic that I have never, ever covered in the almost 300 episodes of this show: Pinterest tips for podcasters. You all know me. I'm very stingy with my social media marketing time. I have my favorites, but every once in a while I start to explore. And like something like Clubhouse has really paid off. When I got a little Clubhouse curious, it really helped me ramp up my downloads, really ramp up my brand growth and my business, especially. So maybe Pinterest is that next thing. So I'm very excited to explore this idea. Speaking of Clubhouse, I met this woman, Ashley Fern, on Clubhouse. And I was like, you got to come on my show and talk Pinterest tips for podcasters. So Ashley, welcome to Podcasting Business School.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah. So again, I'm really stingy with my time. But even if Pinterest isn't for my show, I'm not saying it is or isn't, I guarantee it's for somebody's show out there. So I don't know why I haven't spoken on this topic yet. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because I know this is going to serve many people in my audience. And you're somebody that we're connected via Gail and Christina from Midlife Moxie, and they sing your praises. So I'm like, all right, we got to have Ashley on. So hit the rewind machine and let me know like how you first got into Pinterest and how this obsession has grown, where you're an expert helping other people with their Pinterest accounts.
Awesome. I love this. I love, I just have always loved Pinterest personally, right? Not as a marketer, but just I loved pinning things and kind of planning things for later. One of the reasons is because I actually am a crocheter and a knitter. And so that was probably the place that I went all the time to get like inspiration for different things that I would do. And then also just, just for the fun of looking through different things. But one of the things that I found when I was doing that was that sometimes you would like push on the pen and then it wouldn't go through to what you actually wanted it to go through to. And that always annoyed me. And so I've always been interested in owning my own business. It's always something that I've wanted to do, something I love. And so then when the pandemic hit, let's just say, everything went out the window. Everything I was doing before went out the window for the most part. Um, and so I was looking and kind of scrambling around for what I was going to do, because before I was driving for Uber, and I just really wasn't really willing to do that right after the pandemic hit. Aside from the fact that no one was going anywhere, so it really wouldn't have helped much for
Right.
anybody to use Uber all that much. And so I decided that I was like, okay, I have to find something. And I came upon a challenge by a friend of mine who teaches freelancing. It was called Freelance Freedom Challenge or something like that. And so I joined the challenge and I was looking through what she had to say. And she was like, you could become a Pinterest marketer. And I've always loved marketing. So I just love interacting with people. I love, positioning your message and just anything about marketing I've always thought has intrigued me. So I thought, you know what? Let me see like Pinterest. Okay, well, that makes sense that people market on Pinterest. So I started looking into it just to see. So I was like, you know what? I love this because a lot of people who are crafters are on there. So it just aligned with a lot of different interests that I personally have. And at the same time, I was like, you know what? Maybe I can kind of like up the game and get people to actually put stuff up there that's really valuable.
Right.
Because that's one of the top things that I hear from people that don't market is that they're very frustrated because they don't get to the things that they actually want to go to. And so I thought, this would be a way for me to help other people. It aligned with my everything I loved. And as I started getting into it, I just found that I really enjoy helping people market their businesses, period. And I love Pinterest. And the main reason I love it is that it gives you a lot of bang for your buck. So return on time investment, because when you pin something today, and if you're consistent and you put things together correct way at the beginning, it's going to pay you back months, years to come. So a lot of my clients still have pins that bring traffic to their websites from 1 to 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why I love Pinterest.
Okay. So when you say, growing your business, we can insert that, of course, but also insert like growing your brand, growing your podcast.
Mhm.
Like I love content that lives on and has some legs. So now I'm intrigued, Ashley Fern. Okay. So let's start from like the basics. What type of content are you seeing is like doing well on Pinterest? Because I wouldn't even know how to pin something. I don't know what to pin. What is working? Is it like video stuff? Is it, static images? Like, and I know like Instagram, we have like carousel images and everybody's doing carousel. So what is the equivalent of that on Pinterest? What is everybody trying to do? What kind of content are they trying to create to get the most engagement and the most legs?
Okay, so first of all, I have to say that Pinterest is a search engine and not social media. Okay, so you want to think about it a little bit differently than you would Instagram. However, you can repurpose content. So, video, short form video, it doesn't matter where you're at. Everybody loves short form video. Okay,
Okay.
so that is definitely something that you can use on Pinterest. And here's how. So they have two different forms where you can use video formats of pins. One is an idea pin. This one does not actually link out to whatever is off of Pinterest. It's actually kind of to keep people on the platform. But here's the thing. It's really great for building that like know, like, and trust factor and the brand awareness, right? To get people to know who you are and to recognize, oh, this is somebody who might actually want to follow, or go to their podcast, whatever it is that you're doing. So for podcasters, what I would say, it's a really great place for people to start to hear your voice and see your face, and so and know what you're all about. So what happens with these idea pins is there actually can be a mixture of both video and static content. And you can
Okay.
kind of think of them a little bit like Instagram stories, although not exactly, because what they are, they live on just like every other pin does on Pinterest. So they're searchable for forever. And what happens with them is that you can create up to 20 slides. I would not suggest that. 3 to 7 is good enough, um, because people don't want to click through 20 slides the majority of the time. Every time somebody clicks through the slide to the next slide is an engagement, which
Okay.
means that then Pinterest is going to serve that up to more people because it sees that people value that content. Okay. So you want more than one. There are a lot of people who put one up there. I wouldn't suggest that. It's just not as effective for your time. The other place that you can put video content is they actually have video pins. Okay.
Okay.
So you can put short form video, you could repurpose a reel that you have someplace else. I would always say, whenever you're going to do it, especially if you're doing it to lead somebody off the platform, make sure that it has a really good value add. Value first. Make sure that you're helping somebody shift a mindset piece, really get to know you. It's not about necessarily just entertaining. It can be edutaining, but not just entertaining, if that makes sense, especially
Yeah.
if you're trying to get somebody to take action on it afterwards, right? So
Yeah.
those are my tips for that.
Okay. You hit a couple of my magic words, one of them being repurposing content. So I love doing that because like I don't have a giant TikTok presence, but I'm creating Instagram reels. So I'm like, I'm going to upload these and load them up to TikTok every single time. So what can we repurpose? So you mentioned anything that's an Instagram reel. Does it have to be in that certain format, like the vertical video format? Can we do a square video? Any stipulations as far as the size and the shape?
Mhm. So it depends on the pin format. If you're doing just a regular video pin, then you can do it pretty much any size or shape that you want.
Okay.
And we're seeing it do good either way, whether it's the longer pin format, which is like 1100 by 1500 pixels. You can find that on Canva really easy. Or if it's more of that square format, that is perfectly fine.
Okay.
And then for the idea pins, though, it is a little different. They are a very specific format. And I'm going to say this wrong. I think it's 1100 by 1080, but anyway, I don't remember exactly right the second off the top of my head, but it is in Canva. That's why the reason why I don't remember is because I always use Canva.
Yeah.
And it
Canva's the
also is
best.
on Pinterest. If you create it, if you load it up to Pinterest, it will help you to resize it to be exactly the right pin size.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm going to experiment with this for sure now. If I can repurpose stuff because I do a ton of square videos, I do a ton of reels, vertical videos. What about I'm doing a lot more carousel posts on Instagram. Is that what you're talking about with slides? Like if I have like
Mhm.
five or six image carousel with some tips or a little like journey thing. Is that what
Oh
you're
yeah.
talking about? And can these
Oh
be
yeah.
square images?
So they can't be square images, okay?
Okay.
But so what I do when I repurpose these is I go over to Canva and I simply resize them and kind of shift things around just a little bit. But basically, what you're going to do that can work out really, really well is if you have a piece of content that's a short form video and you have a carousel that talks about the same thing, marry them together inside of those idea pins
Okay.
and lead with the video because that's what's going to capture people's attention. And then you're going to go on to explain more about the idea and complete that idea inside of those slides. And the awesome part about idea pins also is that Pinterest actually puts in a slide at the very end over that kind of overlays the last slide at the very end, and it asks them to follow you. And then they can also go to visit your profile. So that's a pretty awesome part about it. You
Okay.
don't have to add that in yourself.
All right. I'm already liking this. All right. Now, you mentioned searchability. What exactly is searchable? Are we using hashtags? Are the titles or topics that are listed, are those searchable? What are we searching, and what do we need to make sure that we're doing so that our stuff is like the keywords and things are being used?
This is the most important question you've asked me, Adam.
Yes. Right.
So, so this is the thing. Hashtags are not on Pinterest. They're
Okay.
not searchable. We just don't use them. And Pinterest has told us that specifically. People still do try to use them, but it is not a good idea. So what you're going to do, this is what I like to think about. If you're using a hashtag that is already something that would be like a keyword. So it can't be something branded because 97% of the searches on Pinterest are not branded. So they aren't looking specifically for you or even Nike. It doesn't matter who it is. They aren't searching for that. They're searching for a specific solution to a specific problem. So you want to use keywords, and your keywords can be those hashtags that are more, like Pinterest marketing expert, Pinterest marketing keywords, how to keyword, those kinds of things. What you're going to do is you can actually research those words on Pinterest itself in the search bar. And when you do that, it will do the same way that Google does when it finishes the sentence or finishes whatever you're doing. And when it does that, it's going to have that drop down menu and it's going to tell you several different things that people are actually searching for right now on Pinterest, right? So you want to be using those words. I suggest creating a very large, I do a spreadsheet is how I do it. And I actually put categories up at the top that are kind of broader. And then I just go down and I put in as many keywords that have to do with that as possible that I have actually done on Pinterest. And then I put them in 7 different places. Okay.
Okay.
So you want to, when you're setting up your Pinterest profile, you actually put them in your name. You want to make sure that there's something about that in the name. It has a keyword there. You want to make sure that there are 1 to 2 keywords in each sentence of your bio. Okay. And I think it actually says about section when you look at the settings. It doesn't say bio. About me, I think is what it's called. And you want to put inside of there. Then you structure kind of an organization in Pinterest is called Pinterest boards, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what Pinterest boards do for marketers, as opposed to someone who is trying to plan something and just save something to a board, what the boards do is that they actually tell Pinterest and the people who might come to your profile exactly what kinds of pins they can find inside of that board. Okay, what topic they fall under. So you want them to be fairly specific keyword phrases that actually go into those board titles. And
Okay.
then when you're doing these board titles, you're going to set up your board. You're going to, select some pins that will, when you're first doing it, select some pins that have to do with that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to actually go in and edit the board, okay? And add in the board description. It does not prompt you to do this on Pinterest. You have to do it yourself. But when you do that, you have up to 500 characters where you can use two keyword phrases per sentence to tell Pinterest what this board is all about, right? Because
Okay.
then it's going to be searching that and getting you to where you want to be. Then the next place is in your pin overlay. So text, a lot of times you have text overlay in your pin title and in your pin description. So all of those places are places that you can add keywords, and that's how people find you on Pinterest.
Ashley, this is so good. All right. Next question. Let's unpack this even further.
Okay.
So, like, I use podcasting tips a lot as my keyword. Do I want to have that? Do I want to use that over and over and over again in all those places, or just using it once? Is that good?
I would say use it more than once.
Okay.
Now, if you have it in your no, actually, I would. I would use it more than once, as long as it's readable, right? It's in an actual sentence, other than in your name or in that. In the board titles, obviously, can be a title, right? It doesn't have to be a sentence, but like the about and in the title, the descriptions, then you definitely want it to be readable as if a person was reading it. But you can definitely repeat the same thing. The more we put in there, the more Pinterest knows that that's what that's about.
Yeah, because I could do the combo with like podcasting tips for podcast launch, which is another phrase, podcasting tips for podcast monetization. Like those
Mhm.
are okay. I'm starting to get my groove in here, Ashley. Okay. So the structure right now, I'm envisioning there's a bio or an about page, and then there's the boards. Is that
Mhm.
like those two different things? What does it look like when you go on Pinterest? Where do you end up?
Okay. So what happens when you set up, it's called the Pinterest profile, okay? And so the way people like other people are going to be using Pinterest, right? Is they just see that feed the majority of the time until they click on something and then they can go over to your profile. But when you're setting up your profile, there will be a profile banner. So you want to have that to have like maybe a call to action that you are a podcaster, kind of give a little bit of information, maybe have your picture. That's what we did for Gail, and that seems to work really well, Gail and Christina. And then it will also have a little you'll have a little at the so there'll be this banner, right? And then in the very center is this little picture that you can have. And I suggest that you use that as the same biopic that you would have, or a recognizable biopic from other social media platforms,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
just, well, everybody can recognize who you are. Then underneath that, you're going to have your title, whoever you are, your name, and then underneath that will be the bio. And then underneath that, there's actually two tabs. One of them is called created and one of them is called saved. And saved is where all of your boards live. And in created is where anything you've created recently lives. And so I would say, whenever you're doing your consistency, if you decide to pin a pin to more than one board, which can happen with what we call standard pins, they're the ones that are we traditionally think of as a pin on Pinterest. They're that 11, that long vertical pin.
Yeah.
And those actually link out to your website or to your podcast. You want to make sure that you are not pinning those back to back, because if you are, then when people go to your profile, that's the first thing they'll see, and they'll be like, why are they talking about the same thing over and over? But they only see the first like 4 to 8 of them. So, as long as you're not doing it back to back, day after day, then you're probably fine.
Okay. So
Mhm.
mixing up the content is going to be important,
Yeah.
just different styles.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, when you talk about the boards, that's where we're organizing our content. So now I put on my podcaster hat. What types of boards or basically categories of content or themes of content would you recommend for a podcaster to be posting? So, like for podcasting business school, I'm thinking like a new episode board that's just like what's the latest and greatest episode, a brief summary video, something.
Mhm.
Then we get into specific topics like podcasting tips for launch, growth, monetization, kind of get into those themes of specific recipes for what I teach. Is that sounding correct? Any
Yeah.
suggestions?
Yeah, I would say you don't necessarily have to have the new episode launch, although
Okay.
I can see how it would be useful. So I wouldn't say don't do that, but definitely having all of the different categories. You want to make sure that you don't have more than one or two boards that have nothing to do with what you actually talk about.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, because then Pinterest is searching that and they don't know who you are.
Right. Right.
So just as long as it's things that you talk about, I like to have like a content bucket or a content pillars, that you kind of plan out. And I actually love using Pinterest to do that for me. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to talk about these 12 different things. And so these are and obviously they cross pollinate, right? I mean, a lot of times you can pin one to another if it's a static pin, but starting with those maybe 10 to 12 things that you talk about the most, that's where I would start.
So yeah, what's a good number of categories to have? Like that I mean, or what's a good, like if you're going to start, you need to have at least four or whatever.
I would say you need to have at least 5.
Okay.
5 to 10 is a good number to start with. I always do suggest that people who get on Pinterest, they have a little bit of content underneath their belt. So if you're just starting, you want to have, a little bit underneath you so that you have a place to bring people to, right? Because you're a marketer. You're not just out there just to be out there for no reason.
Yeah.
Unless you're only building awareness. Now, if you're only building awareness, you could do it without having, you could just create idea pins, and that's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
But if your goal is to get people off the platform in order to onto your podcast, which is, I'm guessing, most of our goal here, that you want to make sure that you're creating a mixture of idea pins, possibly video pins, and then standard pins that actually lead people off the platform. And so that's going to be your kind of mixture of content. And then those boards are just going to be, like I said, 5 to 10 of the what you talk about the most to get started with. And then you can probably have up to 30, if you really want to keep going, but just make sure that they're all highly relevant and very specific. You don't want them to be super broad.
Yeah, that makes sense. So getting started, when I do my Pinterest experiment, I'm going to set up my profile, get all that going, have, 5 different boards, and how much should I load up right away in each board? Should I have like 3 pins in each board with like one of each of the styles that you just talked about? What's a good recommendation of like within the first couple of days, let's get all that up there. So as people find you, they have things to go through. It's kind of like when
Yeah.
we launch a podcast, we don't launch with 1 episode, we launch with 4. So people have that sampler platter.
Right. So this is what I would say. As you're doing your first boards, you actually only want to publish 1 board per day, because Pinterest sees it as spammy behavior if you put too much out all at the same time.
Okay.
So you can actually create all of the boards in 1 day. That's perfectly fine. But there's a little thing that says keep it secret. You click that box. So you keep it secret until the next day, and then you publish it. What I do is I like to put about 10 pins from other people. This is the only time that you absolutely have to use other people's content, and it's just to get you started. So you're going to put about 10 pins that have something to do with what you're talking about in that board, just to show Pinterest what that board is going to be all about. Then I would say that you want to put 3 to 5 pieces of content in there, if at all possible, fairly quickly. If you don't have them all at the same time, that's okay. But within the first couple of days that board goes live, you definitely want it to be giving it a little bit of content. So I would say three to 5 would probably be a good number to have. And that, like I said, that could be one of each one, just like you said. And with that, they could all be repurposed, talking about the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a totally different, brand new thing each time.
Yeah. Because I've got tons. I mean, I've got, we're over 250 recorded episodes at this point. So I got plenty of videos. I got 2 highlight videos of every single episode, reels for every episode, like,
Yeah.
carousel posts for every episode.
You're good, set to go.
Yeah. So content, not a problem for this guy. Am I missing anything from like looking at this from a podcasting perspective that you could think of, as far as like if somebody really wants to get people to, ultimately get them into their brand, but get them to hit that subscribe button? We want to be in people's earbuds. You mentioned the traditional post that's the only one where you can link to an actual episode. Is that true?
Exactly. So you're going to link that. You can link it to an actual episode. This is what I'll say. Traditionally, blogs really do very, very well on Pinterest as far as like conversion goes. So one of the things that I suggest for a lot of for podcasters is that you make a show note blog, okay? And actually send them from the standard pin to the show notes blog, with the episode obviously at the top, right? Because that's going to actually build it a whole lot quicker than if you just send them over to the episode. It doesn't convert as well. I'm not going to say it never will, but it doesn't convert as well as written content does. I think because Pinterest likes to have pinners, when they go over to something, they like to have context about what they're going to. And when they're just thrown into maybe like a a podcast, uh, I'm trying to think, like, if it was a landing page that said, okay, listen to this on Apple, Spotify, or whatever, that kind of thing, it might kind of give them a little bit more bounce rate, because they're just kind of like, okay, why am I even going to this? I don't understand what value I'm getting. And so when you do it that way, it's a lot better. The other reason why it's a lot better to do it to your own claimed domain is that Pinterest actually, it likes claimed domains, right? So if it's a claimed domain name, that is going to really up your visibility on Pinterest.
Okay.
They're going to prefer those over links
Okay.
that are not a claim domain.
Nice. All right. So obviously, we're really trying to dive into the podcasting perspective here with pins. With as far as like I've heard people talk about throwing money at pins or doing like Pinterest ads and really doing really, really well with that. Can you
Mhm.
speak to that a little bit? How that works? What you think? If you've tried that, any
Yeah.
perspective on that?
I'm not an ads expert. I will say I'm do mostly organic, but I have heard that ads can be very, very profitable. And the things that I've heard about it is more like it's less expensive than Facebook ads.
Yep.
So the thing about ads, though, I believe on Pinterest is that there's two different kinds of campaigns that you can have. I think one of them is like a traffic campaign, and then one, I can't remember what the other one was called. Like I said, I'm not an ads expert, but I know that there's different types of campaigns that you can do. They are, I believe they are still a, what is it called, a bid, like you bid on
Yeah.
the ad spend. So it is run a little different. I will tell you, there is a lady named Heather Ferris, and she is amazing at ads on Pinterest, so
Okay.
check her
Well,
out.
I'll check her out. Invite her on the show for a
There
follow
you
up on
go.
that one. All right. So on different social media platforms, there's just a different type of vibe. So, like for example, you go on LinkedIn, people are showing up ready to network, and a lot of them are looking to do business together. Like that. That's you can kind of skip ahead to that part of the conversation. Facebook and Instagram, it's a longer tail. People are like, it's a longer dating process. Before you get that first kiss or whatever. It's like you got to date them for quite a while. Um, Clubhouse is kind of in between with I do a lot of business out of Clubhouse, like within hours of meeting somebody for the first time. People are actively looking for knowledge and they seem to be ready to invest when they find the right person. What's the vibe like on Pinterest? What should our expectations be from a business and like podcast listener acquisition? Like how ready are people to take action on things like that?
Mhm. So this is what I would say. They're actually fairly ready to take action once they actually click onto a pen and go over to where you are, as long as they see the value right away. Okay, and that's the reason why I'm saying that blog is probably a better place to send them,
Okay.
because it shows them that value right away. They're like, "Oh, okay, I know where I'm at. I know what I'm supposed to be doing," right? This is the thing. People go to Pinterest to um they go to plan, to learn, and to shop. Okay. So they either want to plan something for the future, they want to learn about something that they need to take action on right now, or they actually are shopping for a specific item. Okay. And there's a large shop feature there. So um, typically, if they aren't ready to take action yet, they haven't clicked on the pin over to your wherever you are. They're just looking through and they're scanning for later. They're going to save your pin, they're going to save it to a board, and they're going to possibly come to it to later, right? The awesome thing about that is when they save it to their pin, then anyone who follows them also starts to
Sees
be
it.
reached
Yeah.
to them. So it gets out, 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 right? So, saves are still good. But once they have actually clicked on that pin, as long as they really see the value that you're actually going to solve the problem of whatever they were searching for, they can actually be a fairly targeted audience. At the same time, they are a fairly, I would say, a lukewarm audience, not quite cold, right? Once they get to that point, they're kind of lukewarm. So I would say that you want to get them, bring them in farther into the conversation, have a lead magnet, have a email, an email flow. If you're trying to get them into a place where you want to monetize, then you definitely are going to need to do some dating, afterwards. But the way you're going to do that is through, like I said, maybe email or just building that know, like, and trust factor with the podcast episodes as well can help.
Okay. And I, you just blew my mind with lead magnets too. Like I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking content. I'm like, but I could create, you know, a tips pin that's like a carousel that leads into, like, I've got a lead magnet called the Podcast Growth Scorecard that people freaking love, and I could just do like a little explainer on that and get them on my list and get, you know, get it going through that. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Okay. What what are some mistakes that we need to avoid? What are some rookie mistakes? You're
Hmm.
like, don't do this, pod pals. Do not screw these things up.
First of all, don't use hashtags. Use keywords. People
Hashtag
do that all
mind
the time.
blown.
Don't use hashtags. Okay. The other thing that I would say is a lot of people have a text overlay that they put on top of their pins in order to give context, and that should include a keyword. Especially the keywords, they need to have high contrast and they don't need to be loopy font. Okay, loopy, whatever font. They need to be really clear so that people can just like look at it and go exactly, they know exactly what you're talking about. So that would be one of my first tips. Um, let's see.
I'm the same way with
Mistakes for people.
podcast images too. Like, why would you put like cursive font on your podcast episode art or like the main art when it's like tiny, tiny, tiny square on your
Mhm.
phone and people are flipping through? I'm like, no one knows what that says. So anyway,
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, and that's exactly what it is that nobody knows exactly what that says. If it's a part of your brand to have loopy font, make the text that's not the keyword the loopy font,
okay.
right? So, the how to can be loopy. The actual um keyword on Pinterest needs to not be loopy, right? So, that's just kind of an example. Let's see. Any other I would say one of the other mistakes that I really see is that people are using older they don't know how the Pinterest platform has changed in the last few years. So they either don't use idea pins at all. They don't think that they're valuable because they don't link to their content. And nothing could be further from the truth because first of all, Pinterest loves idea pins. So when you give Pinterest love, they're going to give you love, right? I mean, it's a reciprocity thing. Pinterest has to keep people on their platform because they have ads that are there. They want people to see their stuff. They're a traded company, and obviously they have to make money themselves, right? So you have to give Pinterest love in order for them to give you love. So that's one of the biggest things is that people don't add in that idea pin feature. They don't see the value in it, and I just love to tell people it is how you build your know, like, and trust factor. As marketers, you have to know that there's at least 7 to 10 touches that you need with people, right? In order to really build that know, like, and trust factor before they're actually going to start becoming a raving fan of some kind, whether that's actually buying something or they listen to your podcast every time or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea pins really help to build that know, like, and trust factor so that people will interact with the other pins that you have there and actually come over to you. Also, when they come from your idea pins to your profile page, they will go to your home page. So another thing that I find that really helps with conversion is making sure that your homepage is very much optimized. It says what you do and what problem you solve and why people should care before the fold, right? I know that may seem simple, but like a it's just a marketing mistake
Yeah.
period, but definitely if you want people converting from Pinterest, you want to make sure, like I said, they need to know that value right away, or else they're going to bounce off and they're just going to go
Yeah.
back to Pinterest to
Yep.
find somebody else.
I concur. I concur. So before we close out, one last time, just because my ideas are already cranking on this, can you distinguish the difference between an idea pin and a traditional pin? Just like the basics of what makes them different.
Okay. So these are the big differences. So idea pins are like a slide deck, okay, kind of like a carousel, but they mix short form video with traditional, like static text.
Yeah.
So, like we said, marrying a reel and a carousel together, that works really well if they talk about
Okay.
the same thing. They are going to be anywhere from 1 to 20 slides, but I suggest you do 3 to 7. And you can include, or I would include your, like your, my brain just went dead. I'm so sorry.
Like a call to action or something like that?
You do want like call to action. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was trying to say. You want to include a call to action. Typically, though, it needs to be a fairly soft call to action because Pinterest really wants those just to be a complete idea. So you don't want to like leave a cliffhanger,
Right.
right? You want it to be a complete idea so that they can actually get what you're talking about. Something
Yeah.
short, but something complete.
Yeah, so
Um,
with my carousel posts that I do, I traditionally be like, and here are 3 tips to blah blah blah. I deliver the tips, and then if you want to dive deeper, the call to action is check out this full podcast episode where I go crazy on it for 30 minutes. So is that
mhm.
sounding about what you want there?
Yeah, that would be great because they've learned what the main points of what they need, right? But if they want to go deeper, then they can come to the podcast. And
Okay.
that's a great way to do it because it's still providing that complete idea. So that's a great thing. And then what happens at the end of those is that Pinterest gives them a call to action to follow you and they can actually go over to visit your profile to find out more about you.
Okay.
Standard pins, on the other hand, they're the more traditional pens that we remember. They're that kind of longer form,
The
11 by
long
1600,
skinny, yeah.
simple, long and thick, skinny. And what they do is you want them to have a picture that is either the pain point or the transformation, right? So either where they're at right now or where you want them to go so they can kind of visualize that. And then some kind of text overlay that identifies a keyword that solves their problem. Okay. How to market your podcast. Okay.
Right.
Whatever it is, whatever you want to put there. But it needs to be specific. And those include both a pin title. All of them include a pin title and a description. And then you can put a link that goes out to your podcast. Now, like I said, I would suggest that it would be to a claimed domain. Those are going to be much better than if it's just a random, if it's not your claim domain, I guess is what I'm trying to say, on Pinterest, which they actually have you do when you set up your profile is you claim your website. So you want to make sure that they're to your website if at all possible. And yeah, so that's just the link and it can be directly to that episode so that they know they can find out more information right there.
Okay, that makes sense. That I appreciate you creating some clarity on that because I know my listeners will have the same questions usually that I
Yeah.
have. So
Yeah.
now, let's say they're totally confused, not confused, but they're inspired, but they're like, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do. Like you help people set up all and run their Pinterest account. So you talk about that a little bit, and if people want to get involved in that, how do they get a hold of you?
Okay. So I help people set up. That's one of the main things that I do is I help people set up their Pinterest profile and I help you actually get those boards started, identify the best things to put up on those boards right away. I go ahead and go through your content and we kind of do an audit and find out what people are already interacting with the most. And then we start with that and I get you set up so that your profile is all keyworded. We make sure that we go through and we make sure we have all the keywords you need to get started. And then I will help you to kind of identify a strategy going forward, something that feels right to you that will fit into your overall marketing plan. And so, that's very strategic for you. And then what I also include inside of that is I will also give you some templates that actually help you to just plug and play your future content so you can have some a little bit of branded templates to put those standard pins into. Especially I don't do idea pin templates, but that's only because they're a little hard they're a little harder, they're a little bit more complex, and like I said, a lot of times they're repurposed content anyway. So anyway, so I will give you those. And then the way that you get a hold of me, I have my website. The name of my business is Pinned Blessings. And so it's www.pinnedblessings.com. You can also find me at Pinned Blessings on Instagram. And I love teaching on Clubhouse. So I'm Ashley Fern PB on Clubhouse. And you can find me there pretty often.
Ashley, this is awesome. I'm so glad that we got connected on Clubhouse. And like this is the power of networking. Everybody that's listening in and you're like, I can't find anybody to interview. Like you aren't trying. You aren't out having conversations. You need to go out on these other platforms and you're going to find people. So Ashley, you've got my idea factory cooking, like cooking. So I'm going to do this experiment. I've got a few ideas on run by you when we're off air, but I think that it sounds like it's worth a shot here. And like, let's see what happens. And of course, I'll do another episode and report in and let everybody know how it's going on the
Yeah.
great podcasting business school Pinterest experiment. But no, I appreciate you spending some time here with me today and with all my listeners. So I think we got plenty of homework to take care of now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this.
All right, Pod Pals, another great episode. At least I think it's great. Ashley did great. I'm not sure about my performance today, but Ashley really rocked it, and you guys can attest to that. But I think that we've got some things to implement. If you are a little Pinterest curious, then definitely connect with Ashley, get in front of her information, and let her give you some help. All right, that is it for today. And as always, I'm going to send you out there wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. I will see you next time.